Marcus Johnson stood near the back of Wilson's grocery, observing the tense scene unfolding at Register 3. A Latina woman with two small children clutched a handful of coupons while the store owner, Mr. Benson, glared down at her with undisguised contempt. "These military discounts don't apply to your purchases," Benson said coldly, pushing the coupons back across the counter. "Read the fine print." The woman's voice trembled. "But my husband's unit always used these here before he was deployed. He didn't come back." Marcus's jaw tightened as he watched the smallest child clutch what appeared to be military dog tags hanging around his neck. His trained eyes scanned the store, noting other customers shifting uncomfortably but remaining silent. Marcus moved with quiet purpose, his stance and gait reflecting 15 years of Marine Corps discipline. He placed his grocery basket on the counter beside the woman. "Add her items to mine," he said, his deep voice calm but commanding. The woman turned in surprise. "Sir, you don't have to." "It's no trouble, ma'am," Marcus replied with a respectful nod. Military families look out for each other. Benson's eyes narrowed as he looked Marcus up and down, taking in his dark skin and close-cropped hair with barely concealed disdain. "Playing hero?" Benson sneered, but began scanning the items. "You people always sticking together." Marcus maintained his composure, though his eyes hardened at the implication. He handed over his credit card without comment, standing perfectly still in a way only those with military training could maintain. Marcus hadn't always been this controlled. Growing up in Detroit, he'd been quick-tempered and directionless until a Marine recruiter saw something in him that he hadn't seen himself. 15 years in the Corps had transformed him completely. He'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan, rising to staff sergeant through dedicated service. His final deployment had changed everything. When his unit was ambushed outside Kandahar, Marcus had led a daring rescue operation, carrying 3 wounded Marines to safety under heavy fire. The military had recognized his actions with their highest honor, though Marcus kept that part of his life private now. Since returning to civilian life 2 years ago, he'd struggled to find his place. The hyper-vigilance that kept him alive in combat made ordinary interactions challenging. But the Corps had given him an unshakable moral compass and a commitment to protect the vulnerable that guided his every action. Elena Rodriguez accepted the groceries with dignified gratitude, her 7-year-old son Diego still clinging to his father's dog tags. Her husband, Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez, had died protecting his unit during an IED attack just 14 months ago. "Thank you," she whispered to Marcus as they walked toward the exit. "I'm Elena. These are Diego and Sophia." "Marcus Johnson," he replied with a gentle smile for the children. "Your husband served?" Her eyes brightened with pride despite the pain. "Miguel was Marine Corps, just like you." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "How did you know?" "The way you stand, how you assess the room when you entered," she explained. Miguel did the same thing. "It never leaves you." As Elena described her struggles since Miguel's death, the delayed benefits, the move to this neighborhood where housing was affordable, the isolation from military support, Marcus felt a familiar anger building. Over coffee at the diner across the street, Marcus listened as Elena explained that Wilson's was the only grocery store within walking distance, making it essential for families without reliable transportation. "Benson treats all of us like that," she said quietly, "especially military families using benefit cards or discounts. He loses paperwork, claims discounts are expired, or adds mysterious fees." Marcus's tactical mind began assembling facts. "Has anyone reported him?" "Some have tried, but he's careful. Keeps it just below the level that would trigger official action. Most families here are struggling too much to fight back effectively." Marcus spent the next week watching Wilson's grocery. He observed Benson's different treatment of customers based on race, hurrying Black and Latino shoppers along while chatting amicably with white customers. Military families were particularly targeted. Benson seemed to take satisfaction in denying their discounts on technicalities. Speaking with other shoppers confirmed Elena's story. The discrimination was systematic and deliberate. Marcus made a call to his former platoon sergeant, now retired and working as a veteran's advocate. "Ramirez, I need your help with something." Within days, Marcus sat at a table surrounded by 5 other veterans from different branches and backgrounds. John Turner, a white former Army captain; Darius Williams, a black Navy corpsman; Sarah Chun, an Asian American Air Force officer; Michael Ramirez, a Latino Marine; and James Wilson, a black Army sergeant now working as a local reporter. "It's not just about the money," Marcus explained. "It's about dignity. These families have given everything for this country, and this is how they're treated." The group leaned forward, unified by a shared code that transcended their differences. "What's the mission, Staff Sergeant?" Ramirez asked, falling naturally into the old chain of command. Marcus laid out what he'd observed, then outlined his plan to expose Benson and force accountability. "We'll need evidence coordination and precision timing," he concluded. Just like any op, the veterans reached out to their networks, connecting with 24 local military families who had experienced Benson's discrimination. Each shared similar stories: being overcharged, denied military discounts, subjected to extra scrutiny, or openly disrespected. They gathered in the community center, a diverse group united by shared service and sacrifice. Marcus stood at the front, his presence commanding without being intimidating. "We're not looking for special treatment," he explained. "Just the respect and fairness these families have earned." The community's response was overwhelming. Veterans from every branch and era offered support. The racial divisions that often define civilian life seemed to dissolve in the face of their shared military identity. A retired JAG officer volunteered legal expertise. A former military photographer offered to document evidence. Each person brought skills honed in service to a new mission on the home front. On Saturday morning, Marcus stood before his mirror, methodically preparing his Marine Corps dress blues. Each medal and ribbon told a story of service and sacrifice. He attached most of his decorations, but deliberately left one space empty, where the Medal of Honor would be displayed. In his living room, the team reviewed their positions. James, the reporter, would be inside with concealed camera. 3 veterans would enter as customers. Elena and 2 other military spouses would attempt to use their legitimate military discounts. Everything would be documented. "Remember," Marcus told them, "we maintain discipline at all times. No matter what he says or does, we respond with control and respect. We're Marines, soldiers, sailors, and airmen first." He checked his watch. Synchronized times. Operation begins at 1,100 hours. Marcus entered Wilson's grocery precisely at 11 a.m., his polished shoes silent on the linoleum floor. He nodded to Elena, who was already at Register 1 with her children, attempting to use a military discount card. Benson was shaking his head. "This doesn't apply today. There's a blackout period." "There's no such thing as a blackout period for military discounts," Elena replied firmly, her confidence bolstered by knowing she wasn't alone. Benson's face hardened. "Look, I make the rules in my store. If you can't afford the groceries, shop somewhere else." Marcus approached with measured steps. "Is there a problem with honoring military discounts, Mr. Benson?" Benson's expression darkened when he recognized Marcus. "You again. This isn't your business." "Respecting military families is everyone's business," Marcus replied evenly. "You people always think you're entitled to special treatment," Benson sneered, his voice rising. "Walking around in uniform, expecting handouts. Half of you probably never saw real combat anyway." The store grew quiet. Other customers watched, uncomfortable but riveted. "Military discounts aren't handouts," Marcus explained calmly. "They're a small recognition of sacrifice. Her husband gave his life for this country." Benson stepped closer, emboldened by anger. "I don't care who died where. In my store, you follow my rules. And I'm telling you and your kind to get out. Now!" The silence that followed was absolute. With deliberate movements, Marcus unbuttoned his jacket to reveal his full dress uniform underneath. The blue fabric was immaculate, ribbons and medals catching the fluorescent light. With the same precision he'd used in countless military ceremonies, he reached into his pocket and pinned the Medal of Honor to its rightful place. The nation's highest military decoration gleamed against the dark uniform, recognizable to anyone who had ever served or loved someone who did. As if on cue, the other veterans in the store removed their jackets, revealing uniforms from every branch of service. They formed a semicircle behind Marcus, a unified front of diverse faces and backgrounds, all bearing the unmistakable bearing of military service. Benson's face drained of color as he realized what and who stood before him, his eyes fixed on the Medal of Honor, understanding dawning about exactly who he had been disparaging. "That's your—" he stammered, suddenly aware of the cameras and phones recording the encounter. Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson, United States Marine Corps. Marcus stated calmly, "And these are my brothers and sisters in arms." "Mr. Benson," Marcus continued, his voice level but carrying throughout the now silent store, "the Marine Corps taught me to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. It taught me that honor isn't just about battlefield courage. It's about how we treat each other every day." James Wilson stepped forward, press credentials visible. "I'd like to ask about your store policy regarding military discounts, Mr. Benson. We have documentation of systematic discrimination against military families, particularly those of color." Other customers began to speak up, sharing their experiences. The evidence was overwhelming and public. Benson's bluster collapsed entirely. There must be some misunderstanding. Of course we honor military discounts. I have the utmost respect for our servicemen." Within days, Wilson's Grocery had new policies prominently displayed. Military discounts were honored without question. The story ran in local and then national news. Benson, facing boycotts and legal scrutiny, issued a public apology and made donations to veterans organizations. Marcus didn't stop with one victory. Working with his network of veterans, he established the Rodriguez Military Family Support Initiative, named in honor of Elena's husband. The program provided advocacy, transportation, and community support for military families facing discrimination or hardship. Elena found work with the initiative, her intimate understanding of military family challenges, making her an invaluable advocate. Her children began to smile more often, secure in the knowledge that their father's sacrifice was honored and remembered. Within months, other businesses in the area actively sought to demonstrate their support for military families. What began as confronting one man's bigotry evolved into a community-wide movement of recognition and respect. Marcus trained local veterans to continue the work, creating a sustainable support system that would outlast any individual effort. The mission had changed, but the core values remained the same: leave no one behind. The confrontation at Wilson's Grocery revealed uncomfortable truths about how America sometimes treats its heroes. Black and brown veterans who had risked everything for their country often returned to face discrimination that ignored their service and sacrifice. Yet Marcus's story demonstrated something equally powerful: the ability of military values to bridge divides and create change. The discipline, teamwork, and moral courage that defined military service proved equally valuable in civilian battles for dignity and respect. For Marcus, the uniform had always represented something greater than himself. Now, that same principle guided his civilian life. By standing up not for himself but for a fellow Marine's family, he had honored his oath in a new way. The greatest victory wasn't forcing one store owner to change his policies. It was reminding an entire community that respect isn't something to be earned anew each day, especially by those who have already given so much. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination against a military family in your community? Have you or someone you know experienced the unique challenges of transitioning from military to civilian life? Our veterans don't just serve overseas. They continue their service through leadership in our communities. Share this story to honor the Black veterans whose contributions too often go unrecognized. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply stand beside someone who stands alone.